It's time for another episode of the Shaun Tabatt Show, a podcast where I connect you with thought leaders from across the globe, digging into some of my favorite topics like personal development, marketing, spirituality, and pretty much any other shiny object that happens to catch my attention. Today, my special guest is Jeremiah Johnson, and we're going to be discussing his brand new book, Houses of Glory: Prophetic Strategies for Entering the New Era. Jeremiah, it is truly an honor, sir. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Sean, thanks so much for having me on today. It's a joy to be with you.
And in the circles I run in professionally, Jeremiah is no stranger. We bump into each other at events and meetings and all sorts of places. However, I know for some of you listening to this and watching this, this will be the very first time you are meeting Jeremiah. So we're going to kick this off by having him share a little bit of the Jeremiah Johnson origin story. For somebody meeting you for the first time in our talk today, what are a few things they should know about you?
Yeah, Sean, I graduated from Southeastern University in Lakeland, Florida. Got a majored in Bible there. Got a minor in missions. Upon graduation, my wife and I planted Heart of the Father Ministry. We have two campuses in Lakeland and Winter Haven. And so we were there for a decade, 10 years. And at the end of a decade, we really felt God asking us to just release the campuses to the leadership we had raised up and groomed over the years, and moved to Charlotte, North Carolina recently in 2020, and have birthed a movement called the Altar Global, which is a movement of Christians that share a common urgency and burden for the return of the Lord, the preparation of the bride. Love my wife, got four kids, enjoy working out, obviously writing and reading.
Well, thanks for giving us that quick elevator pitch of your story, your journey. Let's transition now into the story behind the book. Obviously, as a guy who works in publishing, I'm ever curious to know how a message gets started. This is releasing into a very interesting season for the country, the world, the church. So, what was kind of the impetus, the spark that got this message moving and and got you to start writing?
Yeah, this was a unique book. It was written during the, COVID-19, when it really began to gain traction, February and March 2020. I was developing a burden, I guess you could say. I remember watching an interview with somebody from the CDC who had made this statement about COVID-19, that the more interacted with congregations around America, that almost what he had said about the world was the same that I was seeing in the church. And so I began to carry this prophetic burden, like there's just as much shock, confusion, and panic in the church as there is in the world. And my heart was just gripped that that global shaking was actually what I came to believe and heard from the Lord, was that global shaking was going to be used to help prepare houses of glory to emerge all over the earth. So it's a little bit of the backstory. I would really, though, characterize it by that interview that I watch on TV. It was just like, sometimes you watch things and you get struck to the core. It rocked me. This gentleman saying COVID-19 has brought the nations to their knees, and I thought to myself, yeah, it's brought the church to her knees as well. And Lord, we're in trouble. We need strategies, and that's where the Lord really began to say to me, Jeremiah, there's a new era that's coming to the body of Christ, where I'm going to use the crisis, the shaking in the midst of it. You're going to see a mighty revival. You're going to see houses of glory emerge in the earth.
One of the things I found particularly insightful early in the book is you talk about, I believe it was either a dream or a vision where God showed you three different types of churches: the sleeping church, the street church, and the surrendered church. And I feel like each one of us could probably say, "Oh, I've been a part of that kind of church or this other kind of church." So tell us about those three different types of churches and what God was trying to communicate to you through that dream or
Yeah.
vision.
Yeah. This was actually a prophetic dream back in 2015, that I wrote about in this brand new book, Houses of Glory. It was actually the way that the Lord gave it to me was that the perfect storm was upon America. And if there are any listeners out there, you might be familiar with John Paul Jackson, who's gone to be with the Lord. he also had a similar dream, I believe, around 2014 about a perfect storm coming to America. But I saw this gigantic storm coming to America back in 2015. It wasn't a physical storm; it was a spiritual storm. And as the storm made its way to America in the dream, I started riding this horse all over churches in America. And I had like this Paul Revere thing on me. And Paul Revere back in the day was someone that warned people that the British are coming. He was kind of like a watchman. And so in this dream, I kind of found myself like a watchman, but I visited three types of churches in the midst of this kind of storm that I saw. And as you mentioned, there was a sleeping church. I walked into a particular church. Everybody had pacifiers in their mouth, and it was like they were awake, but they were unable to digest, to grow, to be nurtured. You have that scripture in Ephesians that talks about when there's not sound doctrine, people like infants were tossed back and forth by every wave of doctrine. The second church that I was a part of in the dream was what I called the street church. And honestly, I've got to tell you, a lot of the BLM, the Antifa, in the dream, I mean, they were rioting, they were looting, but they carried like this banner of grace. But I knew in the dream it was like this false sense of grace. It was this grace that gave people a license to sin. Most of the folks in that particular movement I saw in the dream were young adults, young people. And God said to me in the dream, they never understood biblical grace. They're going to twist it into tolerance, a rebellious spirit. And then the third church that I visited in that dream was the surrendered church. And I knew in the dream that the surrendered church, a church yielded to the Spirit of God in the midst of global shaking, was what he wanted in the earth. So I go into a lot more detail in the book, but yeah, that was like a life changing, powerful dream that I knew, like when COVID-19 came in 2020, I'm like, man, this really seems eerily familiar to what I saw in 2015 in the dream.
Well, and anytime we're stepping into a new season, where we're moving away from the old, or feels like we're stepping into something that's maybe never been done before, a lot of us get the opportunity to be pioneers. However, when we step outside of the box, there's going to be attacks on us when we're pioneering. And one of the things I wrote down in my notes, as a pioneer, you must recognize that both God and the devil want you to die, but for different reasons. And so, a lot of times we'll step into a season of great attack. And we're like, man, the devil is just trying to take me down. But that's not to say that God isn't also trying to sift us and refine us and help us to reform into what he needs us to be in that same season. So talk to us a little about dealing with the attacks of the enemy, but also embracing God's refining as we pioneer in this new season.
Yeah, Shaun, I believe that there are a lot of folks out there. I run into them myself who have thoughts about the church and leadership and what they could do better and what's wrong. And I know my own personal journey, having planted a church out of our living room in 2010, and having even before that, being a college pastor, more than 12, 13 years of frontline full-time ministry, that pioneering thing. I think it's like it's one thing to sit on the sidelines and criticize and accuse, which breaks my heart, because I have found that's often what people do. We sit online, we talk about reform, we talk about a new era, but no one's really paying the price to pioneer the new era. Haggai cried out in his generation, the house of the Lord is in ruins. Why should we hang out in our luxurious homes? And so I feel similarly, the house of the Lord in many places due to the pandemic, it's in ruins. There are still churches. Here we are, April 2021, in Europe, Canada. I mean, they're being arrested in Canada for trying to have a church service. So I mean, you talk about the shaking, or more to your question, the price. How do we deal with the criticism? How do we deal with the accusation of when we're really doing the frontline work of the Lord? And I know in my life, I began to realize that God was so good that He was going to use the accusation of the enemy for my good. I remember calling up a spiritual father years ago. There were some rumors and lies being spread about me online that were really hurting my heart. And I called up this spiritual father to, for him to console me, for him to tell me it wasn't true. And on the other end of the phone, he says to me, "Well, what if it's true?" And I'm like, "What do you mean? What if it's true?" And he's like, "Jeremiah, what in you needs to die that you care so much about what these people are saying about you?" And Shaun, man, I went on a 21-day fast the next day, being so rocked by that challenge from a spiritual father. So, for pioneers, trailblazers, folks listening today that feel a call, whether it's to the marketplace, church planning, the attacks are going to come, the criticism are going to come. I'm going to say categorically, please don't be one of those people online that just talks about needed change and not do anything about it. But listen, even those accusations, those darts from the enemy, we can turn them in a redemptive way and die to opinions and criticisms, and really learn how to be defined by what God says about us. So I've taken my licks and my lumps and some of those things up to this point. I know there'll be more, but I just have a huge heart for folks on the front lines. I've got a huge heart for people that are just, I guess they call them armchair theologians. We've just got way too many people in the body of Christ who think they can do it better. And I'm like, well, go ahead. What's stopping you from trying it out? So that's a little bit there.
Next, I'd love to have you talk to us a little about the upending of our structures and our hierarchies. Obviously, we could all list a lot of ways that kind of a one man show, celebrity ministers, and all that has been living large really for the past 20 to 30 years throughout church culture. In this new era, in this emerging season, how is God asking us to put Jesus back at the head or at the top of those hierarchies? Maybe it's time for us all to get a little bit lower and back in the dirt some.
Yeah, Shaun. I mean, if I could speak candidly to you, I mean, I see God doing this with me. Here I wrote this book, Houses of Glory, talking about how God was going to tear down celebrity Christianity in America. And oftentimes the overemphasis that we have on ministers and public figures. And little did I know that God was going to come after me, Jeremiah Johnson Ministries, and asked me to shut it all down and get on my face and repent and get humble. And, sometimes as prophetic messengers, you are the message. And so I very much probably have what you just asked more nearer and dearer to my heart than maybe anything else that we'll ask. You'll ask, in COVID-19, hey, the corporate gatherings get shut down. And all of a sudden, this whole mentality in America, specifically, where you just kind of go to church and get entertained. Well, what happens when you can't do that anymore? It was almost like God was exposing, I call it like a feeding tube. It's like the feeding tube. We go to church, we plug our feeding tube into the pulpit, and we let a man or woman of God feed us. The Lord shuts that down. And in this new era, he begins to birth this house church model. I don't know what you hear, but I hear it's exploding in America. All over, even all over the globe, people are meeting in their homes, they're hosting the presence, but it's like God exposed either idolatry or the gap between the clergy and the laity. and the Lord is coming after us all, marketplace, ministers, moms, dads, grandpas. And I believe, and what I wrote about in this book is in this new era, there's going to be way less of a focus on celebrity, well-known leaders, and way more of a focus on everyday saints and laity walking in the power of the Holy Spirit, becoming a house of glory themselves, so that no matter what shaking comes globally or even personally, we'll be able to stand in an hour of crisis.
One of the things that I feel like we saw in a big way last year was the complete lack of mothering and fathering. Obviously, I think the boomers experienced that. I feel I'm a Gen Xer, and I feel like as you get past my generation, it just increasingly gets worse and worse to where with some of these latter generations, it's almost to the point of abandonment, where they just weren't mothered and fathered by anybody except for maybe their peers and what they saw happening in media and culture. But in terms of what God's trying to do in this emerging new era, this new season. How is God calling up true mothers and fathers, but also true sons and daughters who I feel like the intentionality has to be right on both sides of that equation for what God wants to do with the older generation who has maybe more experience and wisdom and the up and coming generations who desperately need mentoring right now.
Yeah, that's such a great, to me, it's a great lead into right back what I talked about. So Shaun, I like I said, by confession, I've moved in and out of the celebrity Christianity reality for a long time. And I meet people that want spiritual fathering and mothering, and I walk with people who want to spiritually mothering father, but more from a platform basis. And what I've seen over the years is a lot of people who want spiritual mothering and fathering, what they mean by that is they want to be connected to someone famous that oftentimes is meeting a desire in them for worth, value, and significance. And so it's twisted from the start. And in the midst of this, we have fathers and mothers in the body of Christ, 50s, 60s, 70s, they're gold. They have wisdom, they have life experience, but because they're not famous or they don't have a platform, they just get shoved to the side. And so I travel every other week. I mean, I get around and I'm meeting these older saints who are heartbroken. They feel like they don't have anything to offer. And I'm like, oh my, no, you. So I'm trying to like, listen, there's plenty of fathering, mothering, hang in there. You have worth and value. And then I'm running to the next generation saying, listen, stop chasing after celebrity ministers, trying to get their network, trying to pay them a monthly fee. I call it a rent a daddy. We're trying to rent daddies, rent mommies. Look at me. I'm connected to Apostle so and so. It's like, stop all that nonsense and let's see a generational connection here that's not based on popularity, Facebook following. Like, let's have some organic connection. But again, in order for this kind of, in my opinion, New Testament reality to be manifested in the earth, the whole celebrity platform, that whole thing has to be torn down. And I do believe it's going to come down in this new era. And I do believe redemptively, COVID-19 has helped to expose it and knock it down.
And in terms of our gatherings as we look ahead to what God wants to do here in the future, whether we're talking about a larger church corporate gathering or what we're doing in our house churches, which, as you've said, and I would agree, has grown exponentially across the globe. We're seeing more people meeting in homes than I think we've ever seen in recent history. How do we make sure or ensure that we're making room for the Holy Spirit to move? I feel like that was probably one of the biggest challenges we've had with corporate church, where it was too structured. It was like 45 minutes. We stop on a dime and we go home and watch the football game. How do we change our posture and allow the Holy Spirit to work and move?
Yeah, that's such a great question. Sean, I guess my comment, there's nothing like encountering Jesus, falling in love with him. I know that there's a quote out there. Slips my mind who it's by, but they said in revival, time doesn't exist. And I think there's a place of encountering Jesus, falling in love with him, where this kind of drive-through church mentality, 45 minutes in and out. I mean, I was at a church the other day, 3 songs, 20-minute message, and people are filing out. And again, I'm just being honest. I'm like, where are we going? Like, where are people going? Oh, they gotta go eat, they gotta watch a football game. And I'm like, man, I was like a really busy bachelor until I met my wife, right? Like I worked a job, I took 18 credit hours in college. But the moment my wife showed interest in me, I was free. My schedule, I had to, one time oh, I need to go to bed at 9 p.m. and wake up for work. I'm talking to her on the phone till 2, 3 in the morning. And it's like, I liken that to, man, the same way that I encountered my wife, we fell in love, and what I couldn't do in a previous season, I did with ease. I just believe that in this new era, there's going to be, I call it a love sickness. There's going to be such a love sickness with Jesus, such a hunger, a pure hunger for him, that the Holy Spirit gets poured out in our midst. And it's like, it's not when are we going to leave? It's almost like, why do we have to leave? But it's going to come not out of religious obligation, making people feel like they're going to go to hell if they don't give us their money. I just see a true falling in love with Jesus, fresh outpouring of the Holy Spirit. And again, it just doing away with drive through sermonettes, produce Christianettes, this shallow, dry, stale Christianity. I'm like, man, there's so much more that God has for his saints and leaders in a new era. And I believe by the help of the Holy Spirit, he's going to get us there.
And one of the last places I want to go in our conversation today, and I think this is actually the last chapter in the book where you address some of the shifts that maybe need to happen within itinerant ministry. Obviously, you and I run in circles where pretty much everybody we know, they're all itinerant ministers. So, what are maybe some of the ways God wants to shift itinerant ministry in this new season?
Yeah, definitely. If people are traveling and doing ministry, they might be most upset with the last chapter of the book on itinerant ministry. As much as I foresee in the new era, God shifting things inside the church, I also believe there's massive dysfunction in traveling ministry, where so many traveling ministers are disconnected from accountability, from community. And I've had to learn over time, how damaging this can be to prophetic ministry. We continue to have leaders fall in the body of Christ, sexual immorality, money embezzlement, suicide. And at the end of the day, it's because there's a lack of community. So, Sean, when you look at the New Testament, the apostles, the prophets, they weren't just like wandering around calling the church at Corinth saying, hey, do you want to have me in to preach to, these were individuals. You have in Acts 13, the elders laid hands on Paul and Barnabas and sent them out. And then later on, we know Paul and Barnabas traveled back to the church in Jerusalem and gave them a report of what was happening. And so, in a lot of itinerant minister circles, no one's laid hands on them. They don't really have a home fellowship. They're not really their marriage, their family. So, as much as I believe in this new era, God's going to reform the church and the structure of it, He's going to come, and there's a needed healthiness, there's a needed accountability and community for individuals traveling around and speaking at conferences and churches.
And in terms of the reader's journey with the book or what they've heard in our conversation today, what's that big takeaway, that core idea you hope everybody gets from this message?
Wow. My heart is I hope that people will be open and honest. I believe again, COVID-19, it was a pop quiz. And a lot, and maybe people disagree. I believe a lot of us failed. We got hit with that pop quiz. What do we do? And so my takeaway is that we're honest with what has really happened in the last year, that we have been shaken to the core, that we can't go back to the way we were doing things. My heart's cry is that we would not go back to business as usual pre-COVID. I believe there's a post quarantine church, houses of glory, both corporately and individually, that are emerging in the earth. And I pray that people would be open to hearing what God is saying in a new era.
And Jeremiah, for the listeners, the viewers who'd like to connect with you, find out more about this new book, find out more about your school, where can we discover all of that on the web?
You can follow our movement at thealtarglobal.com. Or if you want to find out more information about our School of Ministry, you can go to thealtar.school. Shaun, thanks so much for having me. They can go on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, The Altar Global.
And like we do with every episode, we'll have links in the show notes, places where you can connect with Jeremiah and pick up your very own copy of his new book. It's time to bring this episode of the Shaun Tabatt Show to a close. Many thanks for being a part of my conversation with Jeremiah Johnson. Once again, our book today was Houses of Glory, Prophetic Strategies for Entering the New Era. If you want to find out more, head on over to their ministry's website. You can find that at thealtarglobal.com. And Jeremiah, once again, thank you so much for sharing with us today. It's been a true honor to finally have you on the show.
You bet. Take care.